Hi, welcome back to Sisterhood in Surgery. Our May topic is managing your career in the wake of divorce. And I have my co-host here, Palma Shaw, as you know, and then we have great guests today. I'll start with the introductions. Dr. Alan Lumsden, who's my chair, really needs no introduction. He's the reason why we're here today as a webcast, a studio, but I have him here today for his real-world life experiences on divorce. Palma, you want to do the next introduction?
Sure. It's my pleasure to introduce Anahita Dua, who we're bringing back from a previous webinar because of her vast experience, and it's the fact that she has so much to contribute. She's an assistant professor at the Harvard Medical School and a vascular surgeon at the Massachusetts General Hospital. She directs their vascular lab and is co-director of the Peripheral Arterial Disease Center, associate director of the Wound Care Program, and director of the Lymphedema Center. She specializes in advanced endovascular and open techniques for the care of patients with peripheral arterial disease, diabetic limb disease, aortic disease, carotid disease, thoracic outlet syndrome, and venous diseases. She completed her vascular surgery fellowship at the Stanford Hospital, general surgical residency at the Medical College of Wisconsin, and medical school in the United Kingdom. She also has completed a master's degree in trauma sciences and an MBA in healthcare management, and has a certificate in health economics and outcomes research. Dr. Dua has published over 120 peer-reviewed papers and has edited 4 vascular surgery medical textbooks. She serves on multiple national vascular surgery committees through the Society for Vascular Surgery and other vascular organizations. And Dr. Dua is the mother of a 4-year-old daughter and a 1.5-year-old son. Welcome, Anahita. Thank you.
Thank you. You forgot to say twice divorce.
Yes.
I'm going to leave that up to you. This is where we air the dirty laundry.
Yes.
They're still kicking.
Yeah.
The guy and my career.
Yeah. And so we have our expert today, the divorce lawyer of Houston, Golda Jacob. Welcome. Thanks for coming in person.
My pleasure.
She has graduated from South Texas Law School and was admitted to the Texas Bar in 1992. She's been practicing family law since then, and just prior to this, she said, divorce is my favorite topic. Her practice is 90 to 95% family law, including divorces, modifications, custody, division of complicated assets, enforcements, etc. She's board certified by the Texas Board of Legal Specialization in Family Law and a member of the ABA, HBA, Inns of Court, American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers, and Gulf Coast Legal Specialists. She's been named as a super lawyer for at least 10 years in a row, and she is a certified mediator and also certified under guardianship. She's given lectures at South Texas College of Law and given talks on several family law topics over the years. She loves her job and always tries to make this difficult process of divorce a little easier for her clients. So welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So I'd just like to start saying that divorce is really an emotionally challenging experience. And we've been talking about doing this webinar for quite a long time, but we needed time to really be ready to do this. And I think we now have the perfect people on the show to discuss this. And if there are children involved, this is even more complex and traumatic. So we hope to discuss some of our experiences. And I'm divorced and not remarried, but still in divorce court, so still ongoing. So I have lots to add. So this problem is all too common an occurrence, and many don't really feel comfortable talking about it. It's just too emotionally difficult. So we'd really like to provide some insight, some support, some help to all of you out there who are struggling with this or have struggled with it or may be going into this. It may be, for some, a marathon rather than a sprint, so one needs to be prepared and resilient. So I thought we could consider 4 time frames. Really, I would break it down into, first of all, when you get married, obviously we all go in with the correct intentions, but how do you protect yourself financially? What are the pros and cons of a prenuptial agreement? I didn't have anything like that, and I think our guests can comment, but then maybe Golda could then comment about that.
Happy to.
Just a reminder, this is a live show, so if anybody out there has questions for any of the guests in terms of their dirty laundry or Golda for expertise, you can join by web and go to pollev.com, enter DEBAKEY with your questions, or join by text and text DEBAKEY to 37607. Palma, you want to start?
Sure. So I don't know, Anahita or Alan, I guess, did either of you have any, when you were married, did you have any plans that you needed to prepare financially for anything if it were to go wrong? I didn't, so.
I can start. Oh, yeah, sure. So no, not at all. I mean, I was a resident during the first marriage that I had. I guess the story is important, right? So the what happened is I was in college and I met a guy who was actually a Bollywood director and, very attractive, but that's about it. And then we ended up getting married, kind of because it was like sort of the thing to do. I always get asked, well, you're Indian, did your parents force you? I mean, quite the opposite. He wasn't a doctor or a lawyer, so they were like, this is a terrible idea. But I ended up getting married, and we weren't really thinking about money at all. It was just kind of the right time because I was supposed to go to medical school, and it fell apart almost immediately. But it was almost just like a starter marriage. We really were just boyfriend and girlfriend, and we signed a couple of papers and life didn't change much. But the second one, that was during residency. I met a guy in medical school who was at what I thought was all the right things in terms of, he was mature and he was a doctor and, our lives were going to fit perfectly. He actually matched in the same hospital as I did. I was in surgery, he was in OB-GYN. And so you would think everything was perfect. And we didn't think at all about anything financial. We just thought, we're going to end up making all this money after we, start working. At the time, I didn't know what vascular surgeons made, but I've learned that too. But anyway, so we didn't think about any of that. And then things just fell apart in residency. I think people like to say, you're working too much. But the implication there is that if I wasn't working too much, the marriage would have worked. And I don't think that was it. It was more like just the values did not align. There were just a lot of fighting and a lot of issues. And we never thought about financial problems because we weren't making a lot of money. But at the end of the time when we were getting divorced, when we started to actually wonder when the divorce would go through, because nobody ever tells you how much time it actually takes from when you file and what you need to do to actually getting divorced. The movies make it look like, I want to get divorced, I get divorced. And that's not true. I mean, it can drag on for years. And so then we started to get worried because then we would each be in our jobs and was this going to continue? But luckily, it ended before I finished residency. So that was my story.
Alan?
Well, my first thought is, what on earth am I doing here? It's a testimony to the powers of persuasion of my partner, Linda, and Palma, who I've known for a long time. But I do think this is a very important topic, and it's a very uncomfortable topic for guys to talk about. In terms of, was there any kind of prenup? No, it's the last thing on your mind when you're 22, 23 years old. When I got married the first time to a girl who was a visiting medical student from United States, was in Edinburgh, looked like she needed some companionship for the summer, got a little bit more than I bargained for out of that deal. I was never intending to emigrate, and it was fantastic. So she was of equal socioeconomic status to me, and I've been married twice. I would say the same thing, is that if you're going to be a guy who gets divorced, don't marry the girl who's in the checkout counter at the local Kroger. I mean, as I say, they've always been my peers. They're certainly not inferior to me in any shape or form. But the second thing is that I think it's much more difficult for a guy. It's not an easy process, but I think everybody thinks it's easy for the guy. It's a very, very lonely process. Your friends know that you're going through it, but when your friend says to you, everything okay? They expect you to say, yeah, everything's fine. And then they go, oh my God, thank goodness he said that. I would actually have to indulge in discussion, something about emotions. And so the guy thing is, everything okay? Oh, yeah, everything's fine. Good, I knew it would be. Thanks so much. Next. And you go, I think women are much more supportive of one another when, emotional crises kind of hit the fan. So, it's one of the reasons I really want to talk about this is because I don't think men support one another enough through these kind of crises, and they certainly don't talk about it.
That's great points, actually. But this is the place to talk about it.
Exactly. Exactly.
I would
the
add
world.
to that.
Yeah.
For Golda, I would say I felt like Alan said, I was very alone, very uncertain about how to navigate anything. And it's the same exact thing with women. All my friends disappeared. It's like crickets. Nobody really wanted to hear anything about the sadness or stress or anxiety I was having. Exactly the same thing. Nobody was around when I went through most of it.
And most of them don't want you around.
They don't want you around.
Because now you're a single woman or a soon-to-be single woman who's available. And that's not a good balance. And they don't like that. And actually, men are a lot more generous to each other when it comes to that than women are to each other.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And it's very similar with widowhood and divorce. Very similar. Your friends will find a way to, well, we can't really do this and we can't really do that. And they don't really want you part of the group anymore. It's very difficult.
Is it because they feel you as a threat, or
Yes.
what? Oh.
They see you as a threat, as competition, as somebody out there. Now, they're
Well, yeah, not wrong. I mean, I certainly was. I got super hot between divorces. I'm married again and I'm decompensating. I mean, I can't, that's not untrue, I guess. Because your whole dynamic, it's like your single friends, right? I mean, so now, I might be skipping ahead, but after I finished the second round, I was like, that's it, my eggs are dying and it's time to find the right guy now and get this right, and I'm like, I'm going to treat it like I treated my training. I didn't just go to Stanford. I looked at everything and said, okay, this is the right place, this is the right fit. But I didn't do any of that for my relationship because I was a surgeon. So that was number one, right? I needed to tick this box so I wasn't that weird woman who didn't have children and wasn't married, when I was 60 years old. So I wanted to tick it to say I was normal. I had the husband, I had the family, I was a woman, and I can be a vascular surgeon. So I didn't give it any of the attention or time, I think, that you're supposed to, obviously. Give my career much more of a focus. And so when it came time to get remarried, I went on a Indian dating website, found a guy on there who I'm now married to, and it is the best thing that could have possibly happened to me. It is the reason I'm now successful, and I have the children and everything is working out well. So divorce is actually a wonderful thing because it's a mirror into yourself, I think. It tells you what you really want, which is usually different than what you thought you wanted. And, we should be, and this is going to sound ridiculous, and I know it is emotional and traumatic, but it's also something that should be celebrated. I know a lot of us are now remarried, and our lives would not be what they were if you didn't take that scary step of filing for divorce, going through it, and coming out the other end.
a lot of people, especially, sorry to interrupt you, but a lot of people in your situation, these are all very highly successful, intelligent women, see the divorce process as a failure. And in many cases, it's not a failure. It's really the gateway to the rest of your life. It would be a failure to stay in a very unhappy situation and raise your children to think that that's all they can expect out of life.
Totally right.
So, Golda, well, how do you get? I've been married. I mean, I got married late, and I'm still married to him. So I don't have any experience on this. But how do you how do you bring that up so that the other person is not offended? Like, oh, well, like you think I'm marrying you for your money, or?
Well, there's several ways to do it. First of all, let me preface this by saying that this goes in Texas. For sure, it goes for whether you are in a heterosexual relationship or a gay and lesbian relationship. The rules are now all the same. So, and in Texas, we have common law marriage. That is alive and well. So you can live with somebody and cohabitate as husband and wife, hold yourself out as husband and wife, and there's no time requirement, and you can be found to be married. And so if you're going to live with somebody, you should probably have a cohabitation agreement.
So there's no time limit. I thought there was a time limit.
I thought there was
not
a time limit.
It could be 24 hours. It could be 24
24
years.
hours. Oh my God.
Been married a few times.
You have to be careful.
I know. Dang, I was.
Linda's rethinking what
yeah.
you just said.
I'm like, wait a minute.
How many times have you been married, Linda?
Well, I mean, we can't talk about that. That'll be the next show. Thank God my in-laws are on a cruise and are not watching this. But Okay, so then but you have to have an agreement though.
There has to be it doesn't have to be
legal agreement.
no, it's not
Oh.
a legal agreement. There has to be an agreement to be married, and that can be proved by circumstantial evidence. You know, he gives you a birthday card that says, "To the wife of my heart."
Oh, wow.
Okay? He gives you a
How do they
ring.
know somebody didn't forge that, you know? Like,
And I've tried a bunch of these cases.
Okay.
And of course, a lot of it depends on the situation surrounding it. You're walking down through the neighborhood and your neighbor says, "Well, hello, Mrs. Smith, how are you today?" And you don't correct him. You have bank accounts. If you have them in joint, you put him on your health insurance. So now you got a choice: insurance fraud or marriage. Pick one.
Yeah.
You put him on. You're both on as dependents of each other, and you file tax returns. That is evidence per se of a marriage.
yeah, well, that's true. I mean, if you do insurance, they don't ask you for like your marriage license or anything. You just put them on. Okay. And so then, what about the prenup? Is the
Prenup is before the marriage. That
Yeah.
has to be signed before the marriage. It is a contract. There doesn't have to be any consideration, a quid pro quo. You don't have to have that. The marriage is the consideration.
Okay.
And that can cover pretty much everything from the division of assets on the divorce, or where you're going to live, those kind of things.
And what if you don't have a prenup and one person makes more than the other? How would
the assets be divided? In Texas, it's just and right division. It doesn't necessarily mean 50-50, and there's a laundry list of things that the courts look at. Earning potential for each party, age and health of each party, where are the children going to live, separate property that one spouse or the other spouse may have, the fault in the breakup of the marriage. Infidelity is worth about 2 percentage points.
Oh, there's
Wait.
percentage points added to it. What about
it's
multiple?
only
What about multiple infidelities?
Yeah,
Is that-
with 2% per infidelity. I mean, that seems
Yeah,
very
it's
little.
not because the courts have come a long way in that, and they see that more just as a symptom of a bad marriage. It's
Oh my
not necessarily the fault.
Okay. I'm speechless. So it's only worth 2%. Is
About that in the division. Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out how you're calculating that.
Now,
And,
now let me say, if he's buying gifts for his paramour, or like one client I had who set up an actual trust and bought a house for his paramour, and their child that was born like 2 months after the child with his wife that nobody knew about, that's a little different. The courts don't really like that.
all right.
All right. That.
Yeah.
Well, that's Palma. You want to go on to the next question?
Sure. Okay, let's get to the.
I know we're already, we're gonna run out of time.
I know we need like a second, third
Yeah.
episode of divorce court. Yeah. So anyway, so let's say you suspect this is where you're going, and you haven't quite pushed this yet, but should you do legal separation, mediation, divorce? I mean, how do you advise people? I mean, I just took whatever opportunity I could, and when he left, I locked the door and he couldn't get back. It was just like he was out. He went to the other house we had. So that was, I waited for my opportunity.
Well, it really
But,
it depends on the situation, but you can even do postnuptial agreements. So that would be an agreement after the marriage to divide assets and responsibilities that might take some of the sting out of an ultimate divorce. And I don't see prenups or postnuptials as taking the romance out of a relationship. They're taking the risk out of it. And if the marriage works, you're going to tear that piece of paper up 20, 30 years down the line. You're not even going to know where it is. And if the marriage doesn't work, you're going to be very happy to have it. So, but you have to consider lots of different avenues. If you have children together, you may want to have a separation. Texas does not recognize legal separation.
What does that mean? Why would you go to that though? I don't.
Some states require you to be separated for a certain amount of time before they will actually divorce you. Texas doesn't.
Oh, so you make sure you don't miss that person. and like get back together. Like,
You know, this dates back to making sure the woman isn't pregnant.
Oh.
Oh,
So,
okay.
you know, to make sure that we know who the father is.
Okay.
You cannot get a
how-
divorce if you are pregnant, by the way.
Was that right?
What?
That's
How do
correct.
you, so
If you-
Golda, how do you pick the right attorney? I mean, maybe Alan or Anahita can talk about how they pick their attorneys. I'm on my 5th attorney, so I think I got it right just now. Finally.
So you need to interview attorneys. I mean, just like picking your right doctor, you want to make sure that that person knows what they're doing, that you have a good rapport, because you're going to be pouring out your very essence to this person. You want to make sure that that person has your goals, not their goals, but your goals in mind as the end run. And you know, you can get some referrals, but by all means interview those people and make sure that you're on the same page. That's one of the ways. You want to make sure that they're board certified in family law. In Texas, we have board certification. Some states do not. And
Really?
yes, some states don't have board certification, and that's why the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers requires an exam to be taken before you can join that particular organization. So if the state that you live in doesn't have board certification for family specialties, then you might look to some of the AML members in your area.
Alan, you.
Well, clearly,
Thoughts?
since this has been my attorney twice, I did a better job choosing divorce attorneys than wives. So you'll be the least consistent here. Again, Golda's well known in the medical center. The joke is always that we should have given her an office up in our department and put her on a retainer. It probably saved us some money long term. But I want to hear Anahita. She's her responses are much more entertaining than mine.
No. You know, I mean, I think that there are different phases in life that you get divorced, right? I mean, like if I had gone into orthopedics, like I said, and maybe was making actual money, then this would have been more of a concern. And certainly with the children or any assets divide. But both of my divorces happened when, you know, what are we going to fight over? Like a broken pan and like half a car? I mean, we had nothing. What was actually much more daunting and difficult during that time. And so I think, you know, like you said earlier, Dr. Shaw, you were saying about having multiple of these sessions, and that's true. We probably should have more than one, because the divorce at different points in your life probably is very different. For me, I didn't know anything about, I didn't even think about getting a lawyer. I just needed to get the paperwork done so that I could be finished with this stupid thing. And so I Googled it, and it said I was divorced once in Wisconsin and once in New York. So, you know what Ms. Golda is saying about different states having different laws. I mean, I think that's like a fundamentally important thing. Like I know that there was a colleague of mine who actually purposefully tricked his wife essentially into coming to Texas to get divorced, and then made her get a license so that she would now be a citizen, because Texas is a no alimony state, and that he would get out of it.
That's not
And
true.
so, and it worked.
It's not true anymore.
At least that's what he told me.
It's not true anymore.
It's not. We were the last
not true
state in
anymore?
the union to pass an alimony statute, and it's Chapter 8 of the Texas Family Code. It is a weak statute. You have to be married, unless there's abuse, domestic violence, or some other compelling reason, like a sick child or something like that. You can't get alimony unless you've been married for at least 10 years.
Okay, so you have
So
to.
the birthday card
on your
doesn't
time.
count.
No, not for not unless she says you punched me. So
Yeah. Okay.
No, that's rough.
And alimony
But-
is like getting paid.
it's
like
we call it spousal maintenance, post-divorce maintenance. They really hate in Austin. Those guys hate the word alimony. So they call it anything else, post-divorce maintenance.
Why Austin?
Because that's where the legislature is for Texas.
So what's the worst state? I mean, California sounds like it's brutal.
Apparently, California is terrible. Yeah. Well, they have a lot more liberal laws as far as division of property, although it's also a community property state. It's pretty much close to 50-50. Wisconsin is a community property state also.
Yeah, I mean, luckily, like I said, there was nothing. I mean, we got a couple dogs, and that was
half
really
a
it.
zero is still zero.
So, like,
Right, exactly.
like on average, I mean, on average, how much does it cost? Alan, maybe you don't answer this, but like,
To get divorced?
yeah, like for I
It
mean, I know
depends.
sometimes it drags out, but I mean, I'm assuming there's got to be a base price.
Well, the filing fees are about $300. You gotta, if you're gonna serve somebody, you add a couple of $100 to that. But the real money that you pay in divorce comes from the fighting and bickering and the discovery. So if you don't have any assets and you don't have any kids, you can do it on a shoestring.
Yeah.
Probably $1,000, $2,000 will cut it. But
Right.
once you start having assets and children and you're fighting and bickering over those things, and if you want to fight over the refrigerator magnets, hey, it can cost lots of money. In Texas, you can go to a jury and have them divide your assets or help divide who gets what.
A jury.
Jury can't divide the assets. They can decide what's community, and they can decide who gets the kids. But the judge has to decide possession and access and division of assets. But you can try all that stuff in front of a jury, and you can spend $100,000.
Easy.
Mhm.
So
Easy.
Palma, why are you on your fifth lawyer? I mean, like what? I guess.
Right.
So the question should be rephrased as what did you learn from selecting the wrong lawyers? I guess.
Well, what happened was we were fighting, and I came home one day, and my ex-husband took my daughter away from me up to the home we had in New Hampshire and would not bring her back to me. So I was panicked. What do I do? He said, I'm not giving her back to you. You work too much. You're, this and that. He's very narcissistic and wanted to hurt me. He likes to fight. So unfortunately, this is the situation I was in. So basically, I ran to the woman that did my will, who I didn't realize wasn't really a good divorce attorney. So then I had to find somebody on the spur of the moment who basically looked at my bank account and ran it to the ground. They found 150 reasons for me to spend money. Even 1 month, I spent $22,000 in 1 month on legal fees. And she would keep bringing her junior partner with her. I thought, oh, how cute. She's got like a residence, Well, no, I was paying for that person. So, and I would spend, and the funny thing about court is that every time I went to court, it was like everybody that wasn't represented by an attorney, well, they all went first. So they all gave and I'm sitting there from the very beginning of like 8 a.m. We didn't get her till 11 a.m. And my attorney plus her assistant was sitting there the whole time getting paid $400 an hour to do nothing but offer me like some crackers. And so
Which state
I was
was that?
sort of, this is in Massachusetts.
Wow.
So I really got crushed financially to the point that I was maxed out on 4 different credit cards. And the only way I was able, and I didn't know whether I should fire my attorney. So I finally fired her after we had a forensic psychologist, the kids had psychiatric evaluations. We had there was nothing I didn't spend money on. You can name it, we did it. And I didn't know any better because I was fighting to have my daughter. And they tried to prove that I was unfit to be a mother because I worked too hard. So the harder I worked for my career, hence the title of this webinar, the more time I devoted to my career, the more it was held against me as this career-driven, more masculine woman who doesn't deserve to have her child. And this was the whole thing. So I went through all that. I fired that attorney, and then I did find a new attorney. And the only way I had money to retain that attorney, who ended up being really a lifesaver for me in Massachusetts, Kevin Gore, was I had changed jobs to a new position where I had a $20,000 sign-on bonus, and that entire sign-on bonus went to the deposit to be able to continue the proceedings. And he fortunately ended it for me. He was great. So he saved me, so to speak. The rest of the trips, once we moved to New York, we started again. It was all custody. It wasn't the divorce. He's still fighting for full custody and losing, but he doesn't want to lose. So we just keep going to court. So.
That's so bad for both of you and especially bad for your daughter.
Such a waste of money. It's like $750,000 over, 10 years. It's
It is a waste of money assets that
Yeah.
could be going into her college fund. And you're going to have to share this child anyway. She loves both of you.
It's not me. I work hard. I always wanted 50-50, but he wants full custody and nothing will stop him. So it's like
That's really a shame.
So if somebody wants full custody, then she, like Palma's forced to have to get a lawyer, because otherwise she would be not represented at all.
You're really in a bad place if the other side has a lawyer and you don't, and you're fighting over, custody. You're in a very bad position. You have no choice.
And they kill you with interrogatories. It's like this massive dump of paperwork, and they just give you like this, serve you with this. I don't know if Alan can comment about that. He might have done them, but I filled out. I mean, it must be like 100 things. All your finances for 3 years, every single. I mean, it just never ended. It was like writing a grant or like an NIH grant.
Oh my God.
You're completely lost, and you're doing it in your spare time. And that was the other question I brought up, was I was desperate to think, should I take a leave of absence? But then I was told that the court would frown upon that, and it would again make it look like I couldn't raise my daughter even half the time because I had to take a leave of absence to deal with the divorce.
Right, and that you
So I never did.
you couldn't manage it. And actually, your lawyer really should have helped you with some of that discovery. Some of it can be really burdensome and overpowering, and there are ways to protect people from that, or to help them to answer some of those questions, or to have some of those questions thrown out. And that shouldn't be all put on your lap to do by yourself. Absolutely not.
Well, I'm very good at it, and I could almost provide like consultation support on almost every. I've done removal. I won removal. I've done it all. Unfortunately, yeah.
How old is your daughter, Palma?
So she's 14, going on 21. And
Yeah.
I'll tell you, last September she came home, started high school. 2 weeks into it, came to my house and says, "I'm not living with him anymore. I'm living with you, and I'm not going back." And that's why I'm going back to court for a stupid reason. It's dumb, but that's in June.
So when they're minors, they can't give their opinion, like in court?
I don't know about Massachusetts. In Texas, they can be interviewed by the judge in chambers and tell the judge what they want. The presumption is that parents should have equal access to children. However, I've seen many cases where kids will say just that. I am not going back to him. I don't get along with him. I don't get along with his new girlfriend or whatever. And I'd rather be with mom. I'll go visit him, a short amount of time, but I'm not staying there for 2 weeks or 30 days or whatever.
And that carries weight.
It can, yes. It absolutely can. And a psychologist can help with that, but you got to find one that isn't going to ride the fence. And that sometimes is difficult.
So you have to pay the psychologist.
Yes, you have to pay the psychologist to interview the children and do a custody evaluation. And in Texas, there's really strong rules about that. It comes under 107 of the Family Code. And they have to have certain credentials, and they have to do certain things in order to qualify as a custody evaluator.
Wow, okay. But most of the time, 50-50 is...
It's not 50-50. It's not exactly 50-50 in Texas.
It's okay.
The presumption is that one party is going to be the primary caretaker. That's where the kids are primarily going to live. And the other party is the possessory conservator or other joint managing conservator that has possession and access. And that person will get, in Texas, the first, third, and fifth weekends, beginning either when school lets out or at 6 o'clock, ending on Sunday at 6, or on Monday morning, return to school, depending on how far apart the parties live from each other. During the school term, every Thursday night from when school lets out again till Friday morning. 30 days in the summer. I mean, it's very complicated, alternating holidays. And they still in the summer get their first, third, and fifth weekends, but it's 6 to 6, Friday to Sunday. And it's about 44% of the time as opposed to 50-50.
Okay. And Alan, what did you have? I mean, you had...
I don't know. It was never like that, to be honest with you. I mean, I had kids with my first wife.
Yeah.
She's a physician, lives in town here. And my advice is you got to focus on the kids, and you have to sacrifice. If you're the guy, you do what you need to do to keep everybody happy. And you know, obviously it's an emotional time and there's stresses and strains in that, but I think in the long run, you know, we have continue to have a relationship with both my ex-wives. That's obviously that's very expensive, but it's worth it, and it's worth it in the long run, because we never divided up the kids like that. It was always we had
You had a good
complete
relationship,
access
yeah.
to the kids, and we both thought it was important that both parents were involved in our kids, and to this day.
That's really important. Now you can go to mediation, and I'm not sure about Massachusetts, but Texas has a very strong mediation statute that you can come to do a 50-50 in mediation. You can come to any kind of agreement in mediation as long as it's not illegal, and it'll be blessed by the court.
Wow, Palma, I
Do you
mean,
see most doctors having, because I'm just wondering again about the timing, because I'm thinking of all my colleagues that got divorced. Most of them, it was like in and out of marriages within the first couple of years, you know, and then, so I actually don't know that many people who, and then, you know, people kind of do this turnover, get married, and then seem to be okay, almost like a starter marriage, like a starter house, you know, and no kids, no money, no, so, I mean,
Yeah.
are you seeing doctors the older side of things, or is it 50-50? I mean, are you seeing a lot of younger people, or maybe they don't come to lawyers?
We see a lot of what you're describing, the trial marriages where young people get married in college or in their graduate schools, and they figure out pretty quickly this isn't going to work, and it's usually less than 5 years. Sometimes there's a child, sometimes there's not, and then they go on to have very successful marriages. We see a lot of that, and you know, I think it's like exactly what you say. You know, at that point, you're more mature. You know what you're looking for. You know what you're not looking for, and you just have to be careful not to pick the same kind of character again.
Right. Totally.
we have a question from the audience. Can I file for divorce and get divorced without an attorney? If yes, how? Well, that's kind of...
Yes, you can.
Okay.
And if you're in Texas, Texas Supreme Court promulgates forms that you can download, and you can actually file your own divorce and go through your own, you know, do your own decree, etc. Yes.
I did that for both of mine.
You can. You can. If you own anything and you have any real estate, houses or property, then you have to be careful that property is assigned properly and that it's deeded over properly. That's my only caveat there. Everything else can usually get fixed. But I've seen a number of those divorce decrees where people do them themselves. And for example, they have a house. Okay. Mom's going to keep the house, and so Dad deeds the house to Mom, but both of their names are on the note. So now Mom defaults on the note, and the bank's going after Dad. And he has not a leg to stand on because he doesn't have anything that would give him rights to that house. So you have to be careful with that.
Wow. And so go back to, so you cannot get divorced if you're pregnant.
That's correct. The court will not allow you to divorce if they know you're pregnant until you give birth and they decide the paternity of the child.
What? Okay.
Because in Texas, a suit affecting the parent-child relationship has to be coupled with a divorce. You can't separate the two. So a final decree has to deal with the children issues as well as the actual divorce.
So they consider the child as like
Right.
being present, so therefore you, okay.
Right,
I
and
see.
until the
Okay.
child's born, they won't determine paternity.
So they have to, okay.
Even
so
though they could now they could take
all the tests, yeah.
the blood
Right.
from the fetus, but the courts don't accept that
Oh.
for some reason. I have a case like that right now. It's an adoption gone bad, and the biological father took genetic testing, but the court wouldn't accept it at the time that the baby was in utero.
Well, Palma, do you want to move on to the next question? I'm learning a lot. I mean,
Yeah, I guess one of the hardest things for me, and I don't know if my other guests have any comment, but you know, to walk into court one day and you have your children, and then you all of a sudden lose your child half the time, is very traumatic to a mother. At least it was very traumatic to now only have my child one half of the time. so abruptly, and I found it to be terribly stressful. So I think, I don't know if I guess, I don't know, Anahita, you didn't have children when you got divorced, but Alan maybe can comment, or Golda can comment on how other clients of hers have managed that.
It's extremely difficult, and I agree with you. For mothers, it is much harder. Dads don't like it. I will tell you that they feel that pain too, but I don't know that it's
But maybe
as
they don't
overt.
express it.
It's possible. I mean, I've had men cry in my office saying, I miss seeing the kids every day. I miss seeing them every day. I don't understand why I can't see them every day. And that is extremely difficult. When divorce, that's probably the biggest reason to consider your divorce seriously, because you have no more control over what goes on with those kids when you're not in that home anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I disagree with what Anahita said, and it's celebrate it, move on. Yeah, you can celebrate and move on if you don't have kids. As soon as you have kids, that's a whole different level of consideration at that point in time. And so, I never really went through the situation where I couldn't see the kids. We saw them all the time. And, and you're not the most popular person in the world. And it's my advice to other dads who've kind of gone through this, because you get the blame. Sometimes you deserve the blame. And when you go pick up the kids, they're not real happy with you. But you just got to take the blows and keep going, and eventually they'll kind of come around.
That's actually a good point to bring up, like that. A lot of times I'm assuming there's always one parent that's maybe getting the blame, whether they deserve it or not.
That's true. And unfortunately, parents include their children sometimes in too many conversations about what is going on. So the kids know too much or think they know too much, and then they cast the blame because they're hearing it from one side or the other. And that is so bad for them, because they love both of you, and they know they're half of you. They know they're half of him. If he's really an SOB, then, what are they? And vice versa.
Yeah.
And I hear it from both sides. It's not just women bad-mouthing husbands. It's the other way around as well. It's just not good. It's not healthy for the kids. You have to be able to put the children's interests ahead of your own. And it's very easy to confuse their best interest from your best interest.
Well, the funny thing I notice now is that the kids now are all on social media. I mean, they all have phones. They're all chatting. They're all texting. So I think these kids now are so used to divorce. I mean, when I moved to Syracuse, I put my daughter in this banana splits club in the elementary school, which was for children who were in a divorced situation. And they kind of grew up with that. So they talk to each other. They know more. I mean, my daughter knew she didn't have to go at the age of 14. She knew she could walk away. And she says, I'm not going back, and I don't need to go back. And that's not because I told her. It's because she's talked to so many other children. I mean, they know now. They're smarter than maybe they were 15 years ago, when they didn't have this access to social media.
It's true.
I think that's
it's
an
absolutely
important
true.
point, right? Like that you can't have a situation. I mean, we have to be careful also saying about the kids, because that's the argument that keeps people together. And then the kids end up, I mean, obviously this did not happen to me, but I do have children now. And I can imagine if I was fighting with my husband, even now, if we raise our voices in front of my 5-year-old and 2-year-old, they react to that. They get uncomfortable. And I can imagine if living in a home like that, where the parents are forcing the relationship, would certainly be worse when your daughter was then 14 than what she's experienced now. I mean, it's what you're describing is a girl who's made it through, who's independent, who knows who she is, and comes and tells you, Mom, I'm going to stay with you now. That happened from the experiences of her life. So what would she be had you stayed in that marriage with this person and she had lived that life? So I think, that's why I use the word celebrated, because ultimately, even something horrible like a cancer, which is what something like this is, and it changes you as a person, change and forces you again to look at yourself in the mirror, ultimately for the better. If you just embrace, even if for me, the first divorce was kind of just both of us were like, yeah, this is not working. The second one was my fault. Definitely. I was the one who, made promises and said things that was incorrect, and I accepted the blame for it. And I am now a different person than I was when I was married to that guy. So I think that, while the children will suffer, no doubt, and of course what Golda's saying, you can't like bring things and put them on their head and certainly not use them. But I think ultimately, if you're unhappy in your marriage, divorce is the only answer. You can't live the next 100 years with somebody who sucks and ruin your life, ruin your career, and just want to be dead every day.
Well, that's true, and you also don't want the kids to think that's all they have to look forward to.
Yeah, that marriage is.
And then they'll have a marriage like that too, right?
And I think, Dr. Shaw, your daughter sounds like she's a very strong personality. Probably the apple didn't fall too far from the tree. and so she's been able to figure out what it is she wants. She's the one saying to you, I don't want to go back.
Yeah, so again, there's unhappiness in every marriage. It's a matter of degrees. Everybody has the good times and the bad times, and anybody who tells you otherwise is lying to you. Look, if it gets to the point that the bad times are a lot worse than the good times, then you're going to get divorced. But my advice to most guys is try and make it work, okay? Particularly if you've got kids involved in it. And in some respects, it's awfully easy to walk away. I mean, I don't see this as a success story in my life. I see it as one of the failures in my life, quite honestly. And, in many respects, I look back on it, I'd probably do it very differently from what I did at that point in time. So it's that balance, I think it's awfully easy when you're going through a rough patch to say, I'm going to get divorced. Everybody's got rough patches.
Everybody does have rough patches, and sometimes you have to work through them. You may need a little counseling, etc. But there are alternatives, and you have to remember, forever after is a lot longer than it used to be.
True.
Yeah.
Yes.
So true. That's our fault.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah.
Just let the smoking happen.
Well, one of the comments, we have this women's chat, the night is on it, and Linda, but the women were making is one woman went through a divorce and said, my ex-husband wanted me to give up my career. I would not be a vascular surgeon if I had done what he wanted. And I really struggled with that as well, but I refused to give up my career and what I wanted to do, because I really believe that person, if they're not going to let you be the person that you're meant to be, that's not the right person. And I would never encourage any woman to stay in a relationship and give up all her potential and future career just because some guy thought she should stay home or she should have a lesser job.
All right, Palma,
and a lot of times,
let me make a comment. So, my daughter is a physician. She's getting married this Friday, and she's in anesthesia.
Congratulations.
And would I have liked her to be a vascular surgeon? Yeah. Am I relieved she's not going to be a vascular surgeon? Yeah. And I think what you three ladies have taken on is very challenging. And it's great that you're passionate about it, but it's a tough road to hoe to be a mother, and a successful vascular surgeon, basically a successful surgeon, all at the same time. And so it's probably worthwhile talking to some of those challenges.
Yeah. I mean, as Ali Wong says, she would be so successful if she had a wife.
Right.
that went grocery shopping and brought fruit other than bananas to the house. I don't know if y'all watched the Netflix, but she's hilarious.
Yep.
She's getting divorced, which is very sad.
Getting divorced, right?
I know. I can't believe it. All her shows are about her.
I don't even know who Ali Wong is.
What? She's a Vietnamese stand-up comedian, and
Okay.
she's very funny. Most of her shows are on, she talks about her husband, how she, her whole thing, well, her ex-husband now, I guess, but she was trapping him because he was Harvard graduate, and so instead of leaning in like the book, she wanted to lay down, but now she's the breadwinner and everything, and so she makes it a whole skit, but she talks about how, if I had a wife at home, I would be super successful, but yeah.
Well, we see a lot of now today, we have stay-at-home dads, and you have working moms. Biologically, that doesn't work very well.
Oh,
and there's
my gosh.
lots
Oh
of
my gosh, now you're stepping into it.
No, there's lots of books about this. It just
Oh
it's
my
very
God!
it
You saying
takes
this at 5:52? I mean, this needs to.
That's the next show.
it takes very special people to do that, because it's hard for, I think, women to respect men that are, doing traditional women's tasks. And that finds its way into all facets of our lives, including the bedroom.
Wow.
That's the third
You know,
show.
my husband says that when I come home, he's very specific about that. My husband is a CEO of a company, and my current husband, and he like is extremely like when I come home, he doesn't force me to do female things, but like if I talk to him the way that I talk to the staff, or it's not disrespectful, as we know all as surgeons, it's just the way we speak, right?
Yeah.
Like direct and
Yeah.
like good. He shuts it down to me. He'll just say that's not okay. And actually, in the beginning of our relationship, he ghosted me for that reason, because he said, I was this is the grown-up show, right? He said I'm a total bitch, and I'm not. I'm actually super nice. It's just the way we speak. My tone of voice, it ends on a lower note than a higher note, and it made him feel I was more aggressive than I actually. I mean, it turned out I was, but I
Well, you have to be, and you're very commanding,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
part of your job.
yeah.
You have to
but
make
not at home.
decisions.
So, like, that's what I learned. That's what I mean by the divorces. I learned that I was like that in the second marriage, very overpowering, this is the way it needed to be. Now, very different. So,
Yeah.
I think that's something that Dr. Lumsden is right. Golda, you're right. I mean, we have to say these things, because we're doing a disservice. If we're going to have a talk like this, you got to be honest, right? He's right. It is so difficult to be a vascular surgeon and a mom. All the stuff that we need to do to become professors. I mean, I have to do what? I have to travel. I have to be on talks at the government relations committee talk is at what, 8 to 9 at night.
Yeah.
That's when my kid goes to sleep. I have to decide.
And I was just telling Al, I was like, and I know Palma, like, I don't know how, like, I have one kid and I'm barely making it, like barely. And so, like, and y'all are like so academic and do all these talks, and I'm like, how do they, like, for me, I don't like to miss, I mean, and this is again, like many other webinars we've had, but to miss that evening time, with my daughter or whatever, but yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, it's tough.
So it's interesting because, again, I do think this is germane to men. What used to make me furious was delays in the operating room, okay? When I had young kids. Because I knew if I did not get home at 7 o'clock at night, they were going to be in bed when I got home at 9:30 at night. And I used to be, now it doesn't bother me that much because I don't have kids at home, but when you've got family responsibilities and everything is being delayed for Lord knows what reason, it was just infuriating. And I felt like I had very little control over it.
Well, and you don't ever appear on at soccer games, and then that can be held against you. Oh, he never shows up. She never shows up.
Yeah.
And so it's very hard. But I applaud you all, and I am so proud of all of you wonderful young women doing these
What about
fantastic
the guy?
things.
Yeah,
No, no applauding for the guy.
Wait, we have one more question before we end. In your experience, Gold, is finances 80% that causes a divorce? What do you find causes?
Boy.
We'll end on that so that we know what to look for.
Finances can be a big problem. People don't discuss how they want to spend their money, how they want to save their money. You find somebody who's a spender, somebody who's a saver, and then that's not going to work. You find somebody that's a big problem. Children, how to raise children is also another big issue. Drinking, drugs, alcohol could be a problem. I mean, all those different things. But finances, religion. That's another.
So finances because
problem.
one person's spending and the other person's trying to save.
Correct.
Or what?
Correct.
Okay.
Or one person wants to, help their family all the time, and the other one gets resentful. Or one person, wants to save so the kids can go to Harvard, and the other one says, well, University of Houston's good enough. Those kind of things, yeah.
Good to know. All right. Well, any last minute advice for the surgeons, men and women?
Yes, I think that, if you really are considering divorce and you're serious about it, you might want to talk to a counselor, a good psychologist, somebody who's skilled, not somebody who's not skilled, somebody who's got the right credentials to sort out your thoughts, your priorities, and where you want to go so that you have a clear map before you actually start the program. And then couple that with a good conversation with a good lawyer. So you know where you're going, and it isn't just happening, you just, let's just see how this is going to work out, because that's a disaster.
Yeah. Great advice. Well, thank you
Any
so much.
advice? Alan, any closing advice? Anahita?
Yeah.
No, and I think I've said what I believe. I mean, I want to compliment you and Linda for putting this on. I think these are issues that you guys have tried to tackle in this series that nobody else talks about. And so I think you've got great guests tonight, and I applaud you for taking this, and applaud me for coming on this thing.
Well, I just wanted to mention, I got advice right in early time of my divorce that I wasn't quite able to do, but it's what I would recommend to people is, some woman said to me at my prior job that you have to find a way to compartmentalize what's happening with the divorce in a remote part of your brain, because otherwise everything that's going on just gets involved with everything you're doing. So I think managing a divorce and your career, if you can find a way, as I have been doing for probably about 7 years, believe it or not, I have a way, I just manage it. We're going to court. Okay, I'll pencil that date in, and I know exactly how to manage it. But it's hard in the beginning. But if you can get yourself to that point where you treat it a little bit disconnected, it's so much better for your career, for you, and for everything. And it's probably saves you money because you're not emailing your lawyer every time reacting, because that gets costly too.
True.
That's all I can say.
Well, great show, everybody. And until the next time, I'm sure we'll have another one of these.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for
Thanks.
having
Thank you
us.
for having
Thanks.
me. I
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you all.
Nice to meet you. Might be getting a call. My husband's
Anytime,
gonna try
I'm
to divorce
happy.
me
You
tonight.
have a license in
My favorite
Massachusetts?
subject.
You know what? He needs to sack up and handle it. He'll be all right.
Bye.
All right.
Bye.
Lovely to see you all. Bye.